Welcome to the podcast of the impossible. I'm Peter Wood, and my guest today is DC magician and organizer of the DC Festival of Magic. It's Brian Curry. Hello, Brian.
Hey, how's it going?
It's good. We since our last chat, we have had many meals and many showers, and we're back here now, and surprisingly in the same clothing. So it's just amazing. These are just our podcasting outfits, you know.
This is my podcast performance outfit. That's for sure.
Yeah, I like it. I guess you can't tell. Like, I'm just wearing. Technically, it's a Penn and Teller shirt. There we go.
Nice.
But just the black T-shirt. You know, my.
Wait, you were on? Were you on Foolus?
I was.
Oh my gosh! What a great reminder. I love it.
I bought it. It was really funny. Some people asked, like, did you get to meet them? But I guess a few people asked my parents, did he get to meet Penn and Teller? And my mom was always like, he's met them. Like, anyone can meet them after you just buy a ticket to their show. Right. of all, Penn and Teller are the most accessible celebrities ever, just because. Yeah. And you don't even have to buy a ticket to their show. Like we discovered, I have not done this because when you head over to the Rio, it's pretty much just to see Penn and Teller and then leave. But they hang out in the lobby afterwards. So literally, even if you don't buy a ticket, if you just know that the 9 o'clock show lets out around 10:15 or 10:20, you could just go hang out and chat. You know, so cool. Just so crazy that they are able to or willing to do that. You know,
yeah, that's amazing.
But so something that we started talking about a little bit, but I wanted to make sure we had some more time for it. It involves sort of jokes and script writing and how that all our different processes about it. One of the things that I love about what I do as my crazy job here is that I love dabbling in a lot of different things, and so. In your case, like the fact that you're able to be not only the director and the producer, but also the writer and figuring out your scenic elements and your lighting and the sort of the experience of everything, a whole bunch of elements of it. It sort of lets it come from one central place. But I want to hear more about routining in general, but in particular, at what point you do more scripting than I do. So I'm curious more about the process. When do you type out a script, and then how much flight time does it get before you revise? Like and I'm sure it's different every time, but sort of as an average example, how does that work for you?
It kind of depends on the type of show, right?
Okay.
I mean, if it's a one-off show where, hey, I'm doing a thing for this event and they have this one special thing, that's different than like The Good Liar, which is a scripted show. Now, to me, I think it's great to have a road that you travel on. And if you that allows me to leave the road, right? So if somebody says something unexpected, I can go deal with that, but I always have somewhere to get back to. I've seen a lot of magicians who something happens and they respond to it like they should. And then you kind of lost the thread of what they were doing. And then they kind of meander throughout the routine. And then, there's a climax. And then the next routine is strong. Like, I don't want that. Also, I'm not that good at Denny Haney from the Denny and Lee Magic Studio famously could write scripts on the spot and be funny and interesting and great. I am not Denny Haney. I am not, as you've probably noticed in this, I am not naturally funny. I'm not the kind of person you hang out and you're like, God, I bet that guy's hilarious on stage.
Right.
Because I'm not funny in person, really. And I don't, nor do I try to be, but I have learned how to get laughs, or how I get laughs on stage specifically. They're not the ways that my jokes wouldn't work coming out of your mouth, probably.
Yep.
But scripting really matters to me. And it all comes back down to character. Because what we're doing, for a long time, I made a good living being totally nice and unforgettable. Okay. I was nice Brian Curry, who never offended anyone and was just super quick, squeaky clean. And what was his name? Brian? I don't know, whatever. He was good though. Yeah. Right. And that was me. And I did fine. But the first time I had people like really like me is when I finally decided to, I heard something once that really stuck with me. We don't like, remember the TV show House?
Yeah.
Dr.
Yeah.
House? We don't like House because he's nice, right? We like him because he's kind of a jerk, right?
Yeah.
We don't, Monk is interesting, not because he's the best cop. It's because he has all of these quirks.
Yeah.
And so I like to read books on script writing, and we relate to people's weaknesses, not their strengths. We relate to character flaws, right? And I remember, I think it was Judd Apatow in one of the master classes was talking about the way he writes characters is we're all flawed. He writes flawed characters trying to be better.
Okay.
And I find that that's a really interesting and fun way to look at my character on stage. And so I start with the character. What are the things that are interesting about my character? So I took a character development course by this guy named Sam Christensen a while back. The first episode, you sit in a chair and everyone looks at you and they decide without speaking, they have a checklist of adjectives and what are things they see when they see you. And that night you go home and you compile them. Every person in the room looked at me without talking, and they said I looked comfortable, humble, and honest. And I came back the next day, and I said to the guy, I said to Sam Christian, I was like, "There's nothing more boring on stage than comfortable." Yeah. I mean, like that is like yawn. I'm gonna fall asleep in my own act.
Yeah.
And he goes, "No, that means you can play comfortable to uncomfortable, honest to dishonest, honest to con man, right? And cocky or humble to cocky. I can say arrogant things,
right,
without sounding arrogant because nothing about me should be arrogant. Nobody looks at me and goes, "Man, that guy's life he's perfect." Right?
Okay, sure.
When I come out talking about I'm Northern Virginia's most popular magician, which is such a dumb thing to care about to begin with.
Yeah,
it's a stupid title that I gave myself, and I'm trying to convince the audience that I'm worthy of this title. First of all, who cares? Second, really? Like that guy? Okay. So I get away with saying it. Whereas I'm trying to think of a magician that people that our viewer would know. Max Maven, if you're a magician, you would know Max. If Max Maven came out and said something arrogant, you would believe him and you would hate him.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
I'm trying to think of other famous magician. Chris Angel. If Chris Angel came out and said, "I am the best," and he might say that.
There's no might. Yeah, he has. Yeah,
he has. I'm sure he said that.
Sure,
you would kind of look at him and go, "That guy's kind of a jerk," because he looks cool and everything about him. He's got the abs and the thing, and he looks awesome. So like, yeah, what a jerk. So I can get away with saying things. So the big revelation for me was I took that course. Comfortable to uncomfortable is one of my toggle switches. Yeah. So I do the bottles where I produce all these bottles. I learned it from Denny and Lee, Magic Studio guy. And there's one moment that's really important. It's where you mess up the trick.
Right.
And when Denny does it, he laughs and he hits the table and he's got this shit-eating grin. Sorry, this bleep-eating grin.
We're allowed to say all the words we want.
Okay, good.
You're good.
So he's got that. And for him, it's hysterical when he does it. And I've tried for years. And that moment was never right. It was it never felt right.
Interesting.
And so the day after this course, I decided I'm not going to laugh. I'm going to get uncomfortable because I know how to make myself feel uncomfortable.
Nice.
And people see comfortable. I mess up the trick. And all of a sudden I made my body feel uncomfortable.
Right.
And I was quiet and I don't shut up in my act. So that's a big thing too. So all of a sudden it was the first time I remember the audience just going like a vacuum.
Yeah.
And they were just watching like, "Oh my God, I think you really messed this one up."
Right.
And but that was that was an amazing moment for me because they believed it, and it's now a superpower that my character has. Right. So as I'm writing, I promise this gets back to script writing. So as I'm writing I always think of how can I go from comfortable to uncomfortable or backwards, humble to arrogant, honest to dishonest. Can I use those toggle switches?
And I think that, I mean, in theory, that would also work in reverse. Just like if somebody comes across as arrogant and dishonest, but then they could flip, like the fact that you can flip either direction. I think it's just all about like surprising the audience. You walk out, they've made a snap judgment, and now you're going to flip the script on them, and people love that. That's the delight.
Right. So the perfect example for those of you who know Max Major, he's a buddy of mine. He took the same course. He got arrogant, which not what I mean, but he's a good looking guy. He's like a Chris Angel, good looking muscle guy. And so he has to play humble but people look at him, they're like, yeah, but he's really a cocky jerk, and that's what I like about him. Which
Right.
isn't true. He's not a cocky jerk in real life, but that's
Sure.
kind of
Yep.
the character he has to play. He has to do the opposite of me, which is
Right.
really interesting. So
yeah.
but that is a theme that goes through all of my personal script. And then so what I call the Bob Sheets rule when you're writing script, because he pound this into me, and everyone who knows him has heard him say it. He goes, you have to go from A to B or be fucking funny.
Yeah.
Now,
yeah.
I don't think it always has to be funny. So you don't play somebody who's super funny. You get laughs, but you're not trying to be funny.
Yeah.
So for you, or let's just say Darren Brown, someone that more people, hopefully everyone's seen Darren Brown.
Sure.
So he's got to go from A to B or be really effing interesting.
Right.
There's nothing, he doesn't have any cute patter. He doesn't have any kind of interesting patter. It's either really interesting or it takes you from A to B in a straight line.
Yeah.
So, and so you go through your script and then you take out all the parts that don't kill.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing is it's so easy to get in the trap. And for years I did this too. Like you'll get a laugh with a line once and then you chase that high. And even though it doesn't get a laugh all the time, you keep that line in because every once in a while it gets a laugh. That's not good enough.
Yeah.
If it doesn't get a laugh most of the time, then you have to drop it and create a vacuum. And because without, you could leave it in there for the rest of your career going, yeah, someday I'm going to change that joke. Right. No, the only way to really force yourself, for me, is to take it out of my act so there's a hole. And I hate holes. I hate silence. So I know that I will work until I come up with something different to try there.
Right.
And I'll keep doing things until I find something that works.
Right. That makes sense. That's very smart. And you're also not, I think it's important for folks who haven't seen your show to know that doesn't mean that you do 28 tricks in your show quickly. Like, you know, you've done a good job of editing, but you also have done a good job of, the occasional ad lib and or listening to the audience and then like revisiting that script so that the routine that you do have is even if it's one trick. I mean, I don't know what the one impossible moment every 6 minutes. I'm just making it up for the show. But the point is that there are a plenty of the other content that's happening there is, as Bob says, either very funny or interesting or just getting you procedurally along as quickly as and as efficiently as possible, you know.
The other thing that when you're speaking of that, another thing I always keep in mind, and I attribute this to Matt King, although I haven't seen his act in over a decade because of the pandemic and whatnot, but this used to be true. I very much like routines with fireworks, right? A routine where there's build, and then, here's the trick, here's another trick, here's another trick, here's another trick. Didn't see that one coming. Yeah. I like that kind of trick a lot. However, if your whole show is that, it's exhausting.
Sure.
And there's some great examples of guys who are fabulous, who are just at the end, you just need to take a breath. You need a nap because it's just too much. So what I remember of Matt King, and I apologize if this is not correct, but in my head, I remember him doing a fireworks trick, like cards to pocket, where it starts off as cards to pocket, but pretty soon he's got his thumbs tied. He's got a chair on his arm and you're reaching into a pocket for a cereal box, right? Yeah. That's like, and at the end, it's like amazing. And the next thing he does is vanish a worm where he drinks the worm and goes tequila, right? So he goes back and forth between fireworks and super individual. And Cirque du Soleil talks about this in one of their videos. They try to overload your senses.
All right.
And then they do like a spotlight on one, like it's that clown act usually that's like super simple and something you can see at all. And all of a sudden then it's back to, because it's like a palate cleanser,
That's smart.
And it allows you to be amazed again by the the sensation of sensory overload.
Yep. Yeah.
So
sure.
When I'm structuring my show, I try to go back and forth. It doesn't always work, but I try to go back and forth between trick with lots of stuff happening, clear solo, type of thing, and then back and forth.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's really good insight. I mean, just for breaking up anything, even if our friend listening is working on a PowerPoint presentation and you've got 5 bullets on one slide, maybe the next slide only has 1 bullet, just to really help to hone things. Just having that sort of light and shade and palette cleanser. I think that applies to so many other things that I'm thinking about, not just within the performing world.
Right.
And then I'm also curious, you and I have, I think, complementary but different joke styles.
Yeah.
And part of what I love about it being complementary is that, we can come up with a line for each other where it would not work for our show. But I think it's a good line. And so I think, and you end up using it, or I, you have an idea for me or whatever. Um, and I guess I'm wondering, one of the things that I see you using a lot, almost to the point of a running gag. I don't know if anyone sort of picks up on it, but is the rule of three surprise,
Yeah.
where if you say, I do not have I'm gonna make up an example because I don't want I don't have one off the top of my head from the show, and I also don't want to ruin it or spoil any surprises for people, but
Mhm.
it's think about your favorite childhood cereal, like Count Chocula or Kix or Sawdust and shaving cream, like obviously
Totally.
often,
Yeah.
but yeah, the idea that, and one of the things I like about it is that, like, that whether the audience is conscious of it or not, I swear that they can sort of sense, like, oh, here comes another triplet. What's the third one going to be?
Still gonna be
Right. But then even sometimes you purposefully throw a monkey wrench into that,
Sometimes
so
I make it into force, or
right. Or just,
the one is a twist, and then the fourth one is a bigger twist.
right. Or tagging it or what have you. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
So how often do you, I get the sense that normally what you're doing is you're starting with the idea of a routine. Maybe you've got a kernel of an idea. Maybe it's a method or a prop that you're, and then you're layering on the comedy both beforehand when you're getting it started, but then also looking for those laughs as you start to perform it. Is that pretty accurate?
Most of my laughs come after I write the routine.
Okay. Sure.
It's rare that I write a routine for a laugh.
Okay.
So what I do is I like to type it out on my computer. To me, I'm better at typing than I am at talking.
Okay.
So I can edit it there, and I can read it a few times, and I'll have it memorized. So what I'll do is I'll write out the necessary information. Like, first of all, I need to know the premise, right? What is the trick? What is the effect? What do I want the audience to perceive happened? Was I reading their mind? Was it a prediction? Does it mind over matter? So what is the overall premise? What's my hook? What's my interesting hook to get them into the routine? And then what is all the procedural stuff that has to be said? The trick doesn't make sense if I don't say shuffle the cards, put them in the bucket. Like, that's stuff that has to be worded out. So I write that whole script out all the way to the end. And then I go through and in different colors, I write in applause here. And then I start to find, I'm like, wow, look at this gap. It's like 2 paragraphs with nothing. Right. Okay, can I find a place? And I've got a list of through lines that I've made for my show. And I look through my through lines and I go, can I work any of these through lines? Is there a Julie, reference to the, which is a joke early in my show? I go through the different possible through line ideas that I have, and I stick them in, and that goes in a certain color. This is a callback joke. If it's just a laugh, like, okay, if I say this will hopefully get a laugh, I write laugh. Right. And so that's how I do it, because I like the visual aspect of, wow, look at that big old chunk. And sometimes it's okay to leave one. Like I intentionally took out jokes in 2 of my stories in my show, because I want them to hit people emotionally.
Sure.
So that I can pull the rug out of them later. Yeah. So I intentionally took out laughs, because it's all about tension, right? You build tension,
sure.
And then you release the tension. So I wanted that tension to build. So that's how I generally do it. And the jokes are usually the last thing that go in.
Okay.
I don't consider myself a funny person. I know that I get I do get laughs on stage, but that's only because I videotape every show. I watch it and I go, wow, that moment's not good. And I call friends like you or my buddy Schwartz, or like I have people in my life that I trust. I'm like, man, this is what I say, and I feel like I need something there.
Right.
And we bounced. Okay. I could spend an hour working on one line, trying to come up with a way to make it just a little bit better.
Yeah.
And that's that's the hour well spent. I mean, if I can get something.
Yeah, no, I mean, I love Michael Goudot, juggler extraordinaire, and former Lance Burton co-performer, co-host on Penn's Sunday School. One of my favorite quotes about show business in general comes from him, where he says that someone I mean, he said it different ways. I want to get it like officially on a plaque or something, but basically, if show business is for you, if you saw the movie Groundhog Day and said, that looks fun. I like the idea of I want to relive the same 90 minutes on stage over and over and over. And I want to make little tiny tweaks here and there, or sometimes big tweaks, that'll change, but I want to keep picking and poking at it until it's just solid gold. And, and even thinking, I mean, I even in our era, like, man, can you imagine the time of a 12-minute vaudeville act where, or if even 12, maybe it's 8, maybe it's 6, but like that you just got so good at doing 10 minutes of something that it took you around the world. And, even with what we do, where we have multiple shows or, more routines in our arsenal right now than most vaudeville people. So therefore they're not as good because we have been spreading it out a little bit more as opposed to just doing that 10 minutes over and over again. But still, I know you and I both love that experience of it didn't go great. I mean, it went okay tonight, but now I get to have the same conversation tomorrow night and with different people, but I can almost relive the same thing. And so how am I going to make that moment even better?
There's a wonderful scene in The Marvelous Miss Maisel in season 1 where you see her say the same joke 5 times.
And I remember this sequence.
Bigger laugh. And I'm like, that sequence hit me hard. Like, yeah, that's true. That's how it feels.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely.
She's funnier, but yeah, that's the idea, though. I mean, and I love scripting. I think it's really interesting, and also I think that most mentalists, this is specifically mentalism, I think they make a big mistake in trying to get things right. I think that we struggle. I think struggle is interesting. I mean, imagine Indiana Jones if he walks into the tunnel and he sees the doll and he picks it up and he walks out.
Yep,
worst movie on the planet, right?
Sure.
Like. What makes it interesting is that as he's walking in, all of a sudden the boulder starts to, his foot catches the thing and the arrows come and then the boulder's chasing after him. And then he grabs it with the sand and it goes down. Like that's what's interesting, is watching the struggle. I think people relate to people that struggle and that conflict. I don't put in it's not like every routine is full of struggle, but how you respond determines your character.
Sure.
That's the most important thing. So if you get embarrassed and feel awkward because you mess something up, well, everyone else is that's how they're gonna see your character, which is horrible. Right. So I very carefully plan out my mess ups. Right. I've got a line. I'm the kind of character. My character doesn't acknowledge messing up. I'm like the puppy who never gives up.
Yeah.
Right. I go, yes or no. Your word is a 3-letter word. No. They say no. I go, no, no, but it does begin with 3 letters. Is that correct? That is a hit. Right. Now I just plow through. I'm not gonna let anyone pretend, mess me up.
Yeah.
And I will say whatever nonsense comes into my brain to avoid giving up. So that's my character choice. But everyone has to make their character choice. How would the collector of the impossible? You would probably study it like a professor would, and you would probably laugh. You'd probably laugh.
Right.
You have an insight and like, oh, I know what I did wrong. Oh, it's so like I don't know what you do, but that would be your character. Would have to make those choices. So I think that's one of my favorite things about scripting, is figuring out where to mess things up and where to struggle. Aaron Sorkin in his masterclass has this wonderful thing where he talks about music and writing script to music and intentionally breaking things up. He'll intentionally put in ums and uhs to like make it choppier so that at the end it can ramp up into a beautiful Aaron Sorkin speech, like all of his speeches are, right?
Wow.
So they played an example of it where the guy was trying to say something and then finally he hit his stride and it was like and at the end your heart was swelling. You're like, oh yeah, that's how I want to talk.
Yeah.
So I try to do that in my, like, I was just this week, I've been working on this thing where I memorize the whole deck, and I'm intentionally trying to find ums and uhs, so to speak, for the first parts of the routine, so that at the end, when it works and when everything goes right, it has a feel of, oh my gosh, he did it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you wouldn't feel that way if I didn't mess up, if I didn't struggle. Otherwise, it's like after the first 10 seconds, you'd be like, oh, he can do it.
Right. Yeah. That's not exciting. Yeah. People don't want to watch that. All right. Okay. So I'm gonna. All right. So you're
breaking it up with ums and ahs.
Your website is your website is agoodliar.com. Your social media is Brian Curry Lies. And that, I think, about does it for this episode of the Podcast of the Impossible. But if you would love to find out more about some of my social media, public shows, and other things that are coming up, you can follow all of my adventures over at oftheimpossible.com. Thank you so much for spending time with me. Thank you, Brian. I'm Peter Wood. See you next time.